Hello, it's Sunday from Schneider-Bean.com, and today we have a very, very special guest with us today. I would like to welcome Diane Safir to our program today, and she is the creator of Cultural Detective. If you are not a passionate interculturalist like me, you don't realize how important it is that we're speaking with Diane today. Diane has been in the field since 1979 and has worked with all of the big names on the corporate context, I'm sure in the NGO and government context as well. And the work that she does is so important in raising awareness around the world around cultural differences and how do we bridge those differences. If there's any time in history since I have been born where we need to talk about bridging differences and shifting polarization, it is 1 week after the election, right? So thank you, Diane, for joining us. She's taken time out of a very busy travel schedule and work schedule to spend time with us and share her knowledge. So Diane, just quickly, for those people who are not nerdy interculturalists like myself, can you explain what is an interculturalist or a cultural journalist so others who don't know the term can understand it?
Sure. And Sunday, just let me thank you for being here as well. I have been following you for several years now, as you know, and I am a big fan. I think what you're doing rocks.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're doing a great service. What is an interculturalist? That's a good question. My mother, until her dying day, told everyone I was a translator or an interpreter. So interculturalist, basically, I'm an organization development professional. So for 37 years, I've helped organizations that are merging or acquiring other companies blend their cultures to bring out the best of both of the organizations, promote leadership, for example, develop intercultural competency in leaders so that leaders can really, diversity in and of itself doesn't bring innovation and creativity. It's how we manage that. It's the inclusion part of that, and that's what intercultural helps develop.
Yeah, exactly. So when I talk to my clients about being an interculturalist, I talk about it's a way that you can see the world, your life, your workplace. It's a lens, and in fact, I say it's more like a kaleidoscope where it's quite complex, and where you choose to shift your attention influences how you see it. So we wanted to come together today to talk about what's on a lot of people's minds, is how do we make sense of this polarized outcome of the election. So Diane, let's talk quickly about how can we take this intercultural approach to help us understand what's going on right now.
Well, the U.S. election was obviously painful on a lot of sides. I mean, I don't think the United States, for sure, and many parts of the world haven't seen such an uncivil election in a long time. It definitely lowered the bars for all parties. So I know myself, because I am a lone liberal in an extended family of conservatives. So I think Cultural Detective can help us, though, because one of the key intercultural skills is really to listen. We have the old saying, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so listen twice as much as you talk. But if we can get ourselves past the defensiveness or the anger and really listen to understand what's being said and delay our judgment, just put that on pause for a moment, that, oh, this is going to be terrible or this is going to be great. Just put that aside and listen to what other people are saying. Link what they're saying to try to understand what's motivating them, their underlying intentions and what they want, because there we can find common ground oftentimes. We often share values. We're wanting the same things. We're just thinking those things are going to be realized in really different ways.
Right. I always say to my clients that there's no real, how should I say it? We don't really have problems. We have the wrong strategy. So oftentimes maybe we want to be understood. That's the core value that we have or the need that we have, and we need to find a strategy that will help get that need met. One of the things that I did after I had my initial reaction, it's probably no surprise that I'm also quite liberal, and so my initial reaction, I'll just be very honest, was was judgmental. It was like, how can they do that? How can anybody really, I noticed that was my default response. And then I thought, okay, wait a minute, you need to practice what you preach. What's going on? And I always talk about getting curious. And I thought, how could this happen? And it's not as black and white as I was, my body wanted to think it was. So what I did is I was looking at different articles from different sources. I even reached out to a few people that came out to me on my Facebook page as being Trump supporters and talked to them, and they were willing to share their ideas. And one thing that created more awareness for me was this intersectionality between race and class, that there might be some things that are going on from a working perspective where people are just feeling the economic weight. They might have white privilege and don't have to worry about the racial dimensions that are going in America because they're privileged from that perspective, but they might be disadvantaged from the perspective of where they're at economically. And so it's not just A or B, or yes or no, black or white, but it can sometimes be two things that are conflicting with each other.
Well, and what has caused all this is the polarization. And the second we vilify the Democrats or the Republicans, then we're just polarizing our whole society more. So we really have to use our common ground as building blocks and seek to use our differences as assets.
Yep.
As assets for bridging diversity will promote better decisions in our society. So as much as I may not like Trump being our president, when all my extended family starts saying, hey, yay, I want to really understand, well, what is the yay about that? And help me see that, because they have a part of the answer, without a doubt. We all have a piece of the answer. The other thing I was going to say about an interculturalist approach to the election Sunday is just the developmental model of intercultural sensitivity. And if you look at that, there are 6 stages basically of intercultural competence development, and all humans go through it. The first is denial. Oh, it can't be true. It can't be true. Then defense. Oh no, this sucks. Everybody. Minimization. We want to just ignore other people. We don't want to engage. We want to refuse to discuss it, avoid it. Then we can get to acceptance, where, okay, we're different. We disagree, but let's get on with it. But we have to get all the way to adaptation in this case in order to really dialogue with each other. And that's a very advanced intercultural skill.
Yep.
So.
Oh, exactly. We have people who are demonizing the other, right? Who are saying, no, you're not even as equal to me, right? There are other people who are saying, minimizing the differences and saying, oh, we're all Americans, we're all God's people, and that's actually minimizing our differences. And I think it is hard to ask an entire nation to come all the way over to, let's even say, integration, where we can just switch between both frames. I think it's a huge task, and I believe if this leadership challenge of stopping the polarization and creating continuity doesn't come from the top, it has to come from us.
Right.
So
exactly.
that leads to my next question is, I am through and through intercultural specialist. I believe as much as possible in creating a cultural relative approach where I try to see it from multiple perspectives. But I do believe there are some limits when we talk about issues that are around social justice. So tell me, what are we missing? So as people in the intercultural field, or what is a voice that is quiet that needs to be louder, or what's a voice that's too loud that needs to be quiet, to really go further when it comes to issues around inequity? I guess for me, I just feel like and I'm asking myself that question, is an intercultural approach limited? I saw this post from Paul C. Gorski. He's an assistant professor where was he at? He's at George Mason University. He studies social justice, and he wrote this post on Facebook where he said, I'm just going to read it so I don't misquote it. It says, equity literacy algebra. Equity literacy algebra. Injustice plus cultural competence plus celebrating diversity equals injustice.
Yes. Very good. Excellent quote.
And I was like, Paul, you hit me again, you know? And I guess that's why I'm saying, what do we do about that?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for rephrasing that. Yeah. Intercultural competence it's an internal ability, you know, an intrapersonal ability. I have to know myself. I have to be able to develop myself to that stage of adaptation or integration that we were just talking about. I have to have the emotional maturity to be able to engage with someone who disagrees diametrically from what I'm saying, and to find the truth in what they're saying and still hold on to my truth, so that we can bring those 2 or 3 or 4 different truths together and pool them.
Yep.
Then it's also, intercultural competence is interpersonal. I mean, you and I together or in a team, we have to be able to relate. But it's also societal, and that's where the social justice can come into the interpersonal as well. But our organizations have to put systems and structures in place so that they are more equitable, so that they are more inclusive. That's what I was talking before about. Diversity in and of itself doesn't do anything. We hire people who are diverse, and then we hit them down so that they all fit into the corporate culture, rather than transforming the corporate culture into something more inclusive. And our societies need to be that too. And to me right now, I am registered as an independent in the U.S., but as I said, I'm pretty liberal, but I feel it's incumbent on us as liberals or to really listen to those who have voted for Trump, because obviously I look at my family members, a lot of them are really quite exasperated and angry because they feel like they haven't been heard.
Yeah.
And how can we create an inclusive society if such a huge percentage of people are not heard?
Yeah.
So there's, searching for what they have as truth. So, and obviously to develop those capacities I'm talking about, organizational, community, personal, interpersonal, it takes ongoing structured practice. And that's why we develop Cultural Detective Online, to give you that. Because
right.
You can't go to the gym for one day and get buff, It takes you a little bit of practice.
Exactly. And it really is a process. It's not something you can just switch over from one day to the next. I think we could talk a lot more about that subject, but I want to go to something that I know is on a lot of people's minds. And we're heading up to American Thanksgiving. And a lot of people that I've seen online are saying, I'm really afraid to go home and spend what should be a joyous holiday with my family members. And they're predicting disaster, and either side. People are just predicting polarization, because families come in so many mixes of their political and personal viewpoints. So what can we give as concrete advice to people going home? Should they go home? Should they not? Should they stay out of it? Should they, I've seen even people disowning family members over this. So what's the best way forward just for the next few weeks?
Yeah, I've seen interculturalists unfriending people on Facebook over it. It's just silly. We forget our principles. And I'm in the same boat. I think, for me, I'm U.S. American born, although I lived many, many years in Japan, and now I live in Mexico. But Thanksgiving with the family, keep your goals in mind, or be clear about your goals. First of all, you're there to have a good time. You're there to be with the family. You're there to feel the love. So just focus on that. The goal probably is not to try to change somebody's politics while you're over Thanksgiving dinner. Honestly, some of us on how much you're loving those people that you're with. Speak slowly. Don't monitor your voice volume. And again, I think listening more than we speak. And, another good practice I find is summarize what you've heard somebody else say. Because we have heard what they said, but oftentimes we have to summarize 3, 4, 5 times until the other person feels like, yeah, you've heard it, So I don't know how helpful that is, but...
Yeah, I mean, from the coaching perspective and also from the communication perspective, I mean, one thing people could do is, I think they need to make a choice. Like, are we going to table this discussion to preserve the harmony and whatever I fiercely believe in, I will fight for outside of the Thanksgiving table, but not during Thanksgiving, right? I think that people need to make a choice around that. And if people are willing, or people are going to say, no, I need to talk to you about this, like you said, a lot of listening, paraphrasing, and I would also say sharing the impact that it has on you. Like when I hear that, I feel, and helping people understand, I feel like I'm not seen as a member of the LGBT community, for example, if that's, where they're coming from, or to really engage in dialogue, but real dialogue has to come from both sides. So I think that's the hard part that some people feel, is when they're not playing by the same, not only one person's playing from dialogue and the other people are not. So that's the challenge, if people are really willing to have a dialogue, to create some boundaries around that.
The difficult thing about that, though, Sunday, is we can't control other people. We can only control ourselves.
Yeah.
So the key to me is to be entering into Thanksgiving dinner with some good mental and emotional health and space. Don't go in with fear. Go in with love. And if you have to table it, that's a minimization response, but at least it prevents a blow up, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's really tough, and honestly, I think it's hard to give a blanket answer, because I think it really depends on everybody's situation, their family, what's at stake for them, and go ahead.
Sorry, I will just say, to me, it's a real blessing to have so many conservatives in my family, because we disagree on everything from gun control to who we vote for to the rights of my body, blah, blah, blah. But it's a great gift, because I get to hear from somebody that I really want to understand from the other side of things. So, if we can approach it as a gift and, take that big judgment or that, vilification we're feeling and just set that back. It doesn't do anybody good to be righteous.
Mm-hmm. And I really do believe if any individual is interested in creating change, that the change, a healthy self-awareness of how you show up in your life has to start with yourself. So if you want to change everybody else in your family, that is not the right place to start. To look at how do you show up in your life and do that work, and that might have implications. To start with yourself, and then look at, how do I want to show up in my community, in my family? What is important to me? What kind of changes do I want to make? And I do agree with you that for us to make any sort of change in our life, it does come from listening. That means listening to ourselves, listening to others, no matter how different they are, because that informs you and gives you a much more realistic idea of depth. Can you tell me again, you said that you've been motivated by social justice your whole life, and then you mentioned that something was key, but I missed it because of the connection.
To me, what did I say? Social justice is so key. And to do that, I think what I said is, I think every American, pretty much, every U.S. American can agree now that our systems are broken. I mean, everything from, attending a suicide and then a child abuse case and then going out to yet a third call. They should be able to go home or go to a counselor. I mean, our systems are broken and they need to be redone, even our electoral college system, perhaps. But, so really there is common ground, no matter how upset we are. I definitely don't want to be advocating that people are passive. How we behave with our families to keep the peace in our families and keep some harmony is different than our work in the world. But, a lot with the social justice, we need to go out and we need to make the change in our spheres of influence where we can make the difference. Sometimes that's in our family and sometimes it's not. Yeah,
right. Very good. Good. So thank you so much. I know these are some hard issues, and these are some of the questions I've been grappling with since this has happened. And I really do believe this is actually a positive opportunity in our globalized times. Not just, I don't even live in the U.S. I haven't lived in the U.S. for a long time, but the whole world is watching, and I feel like we have an opportunity to show up for ourselves, for our family, for our communities in ways that we are proud of,
Right.
and in ways that we are working towards the change that we want, and to make a way in which we can do that. And I just hope in a peaceful way to create those changes. So sometimes we've got to come this far to go to a new place, and that's where my optimism comes in.
Well, I pray it's the last gasp of the isms, but I'm reminded of the pendulum that you probably talk about too. When we go into a new culture, sometimes we go overboard trying to adjust so we can find our equilibrium. So we just can pray that the U.S. system is going overboard now. So, I have said for the last 8-10 years, every time I go back to the United States, it has become more fascist. It started out with the TSA, and then, the flight attendants kicking people off flights for no reason. It's just, now you even walk into Starbucks and you got little, dictators at Starbucks who say how you have to follow the rules. I mean, the U.S. has gone overboard. We need to come back to a center. So, But Sunday, I think this is a great thing you're doing around the elections in your newsletter. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
We can do a couple of webinars on the 29th and 30th of November too around the U.S. election and how to bridge the differences. So
very good. Diane, if people are curious and they want to know more about you and more about the cultural detective, what's the best way for them to find out?
Sure. Our website is culturaldetective.com, and from there are links to all our webinars. We have a blog with, as you do, with the new articles all the time. And if you attend a webinar, you can have a 3-day pass to the system as well, the Cultural Detective online system, which is really timely.
Yeah, it was a great resource I used when I went to West Africa, so I really appreciate it. Okay, thank you for your time, Diane. I am so grateful that you were able to share your perspective, and we will just hope that we come together and find the right next steps. Okay.
Well, we will.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sunday. Have a good evening.
Thank you.